I've always loved being alone. It's peaceful, a break from the chaos and constant pressure of the world. One night, however, was different. It started like any other quiet evening. My parents were out of town for the weekend, visiting friends in the countryside. They trusted me to take care of the house, a large home on the outskirts of our small town in Ohio. The clock showed 8 p.m. I settled down on the couch with a bowl of popcorn and my favorite horror movie, a genre I usually find amusing rather than frightening. Our golden retriever, Max, lay beside me. He's one of those dogs that follow you everywhere, especially when you go to the bathroom. The house, surrounded by a thick forest, always seemed welcoming. But that night it felt a little too quiet, almost unsettling. I wrapped myself in a blanket, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over me since my parents left. I know it's strange to feel restless, in a house that's isolated and empty, and yet put on a horror movie. I promise I'm not a masochist, but every now and then it feels good to be scared. It's almost like proof that no matter how monotonous life can get, we're still alive. Despite the fear, sometimes the rush of adrenaline that comes with it is exactly what we need. I just had no idea how out of control that rush of adrenaline would get and how close to danger I would come that night. Halfway through the movie, around 10 p.m., I heard a faint knock on the front door. My heart skipped a beat. It was strange for anyone to visit that late, especially when I wasn't expecting anyone. I paused the movie and listened intently. Max lifted his head, ears perked, but didn't seem alarmed. The knock came again, a little louder this time. I got up cautiously, Max trailing behind me. Peering through the peephole, I saw no one. A sense of dread crept over me. I turned the porch light on, hoping to scare away any pranksters. Still, there was no one in sight. I shrugged it off, thinking it might have been the wind knocking something over, and went back to the living room. Besides that, it was clear that the movie was getting to my head. Now that I'm telling you about the whole thing, I realized that the sound was a distinct door knock. I guess that at the time my brain didn't want to think anything was wrong and tried to find alternatives. I went to the bathroom and was just about to resume my movie when the power went out. The sudden darkness swallowed the small space, and my heart pounded in my chest. Max started growling softly. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to navigate through the dark house. Now I really started to feel that the knock on the door might not be so innocent after all. I made my way to the kitchen, where the main electrical panel was located. As I was about to open the panel, I heard a creak from upstairs. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Max's growling grew louder, and he stood protectively in front of me. I had never seen him do such a thing. I called out, my voice trembling, but there was no response, just the deafening silence. I decided to check the rest of the house, just to put my mind at ease. Grabbing an actual flashlight from the drawer, I started up the stairs, Max at my heels. Each step creaked under my weight, echoing through the silent house. I had never in my life wanted a brand new house with sturdy floors that didn't creak as much as I did at that moment. I reached the top of the stairs and turned toward my parents' bedroom, where I thought I heard the noise. The door was slightly open, and I could see a faint light flickering inside. I was panicking as I pushed the door open. The room was empty, but the TV was on, showing static. I knew I had turned everything off before coming downstairs. Besides, my parents had left 2 days ago, and I never watched TV in their room. Why would I, when I had a bigger one in my own room? A cold shiver ran down my spine. I quickly turned off the TV and decided to check the other rooms. As I entered my own bedroom, I was greeted by an icy draft. The window was wide open, curtains fluttering in the breeze. I was also certain I had closed it earlier. Panic set in. Someone had been in the house. Were they still inside? What did they want? I shut the window and locked it, my hands trembling. I locked myself in the bathroom, Max by my side, waiting and listening. Every small noise made me jump, and I couldn't shake the feeling of not being alone. I called the cops immediately. trying to keep my voice steady. They assured me they would send someone over right away. After some time, I heard a knock on the front door. A single knock wasn't enough to make me leave the bathroom. It could have been a trap. Then I heard the sound of sirens, and another knock on the door. Relief washed over me. I hurried downstairs and let the officers in. They searched the house but found no signs of forced entry or anyone hiding. The cops suggested it was probably just a prank, but promised to keep a patrol car nearby just in case. I thanked them and watched as they left. Even now, I'm absolutely sure they didn't believe me. They either thought I was just a scared kid alone, or that I was playing a prank on them. Either way, I wasn't going to stay in that house to prove them wrong. I wasn't just thinking about myself anymore. I was worried about Max's safety, my best friend and constant companion. I called one of my friends and asked if I could crash at his place. He didn't hesitate to say yes, immediately recognizing the panic in my voice. I grabbed my wallet and phone and got out of there right away. I was already in the car with Max when I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the house completely dark, except for a faint light coming from the basement window. Once again, I was sure I wasn't alone in that house, and that the police had completely dismissed my situation. I spent the night recounting everything to Ryan, my buddy, and he assured me that the next day I wouldn't face it alone. He and 3 college friends would accompany me back to the house. What we found the following morning left me totally terrified. The house was a wreck. From top to bottom, it was completely destroyed. We called the cops again, and this time, there was no way they could doubt me. My parents rushed back home, and later, after the investigation, we found out that the culprit was an old childhood friend of my father's. They had unresolved issues, and this man had grown to resent him. My dad had long forgotten about him, and the trigger was their chance encounter at Walmart, where my dad failed to recognize him. I still can't understand the mindset of someone so bitter that they could do such a thing, and I try not to dwell on what might have happened if Max and I had stayed there. Now, whenever I'm alone in the house, I make sure all the doors and windows are locked. We installed security cameras and motion sensors around the property. But despite all the precautions, I still can't shake the memory of that night. The fear that it could happen again. Being alone used to bring me peace. Now, it only brings me anxiety. This story took place about 15 years ago, when I was 14. My parents were always very cautious about leaving us home alone, mainly because we lived in an isolated area near the Shoshone National Forest. With such vast, unpopulated territory, strange things often happened. I remember when I was 8, a man was arrested in the neighboring town for murdering a girl. 2 children had been kidnapped, and only one was found alive. That incident was the talk of the town for years. People would tell stories about the man and what had happened. Soon the children learned these stories and made them even scarier for the younger kids. Despite everything, I don't think I was very affected by these stories. But my twin brothers, who were 2 years younger than me, definitely were. Once, I found Jared crying uncontrollably because he was convinced he was going to be kidnapped and killed. We later found out a schoolmate had been playing pranks on him and filling his head with these ideas. Kids can be really cruel when they want to be. But back to the main story, the one I decided to tell. I was 14, and my brothers had just turned 12 when my parents received an incredible job offer. They were both computer engineers working for the same company. At that time, they were involved in a project that caught the attention of a better company, and they were both offered positions along with 3 colleagues who were also involved in the project. The company was based in Portland, which meant a 13-hour drive. My mom insisted the interviews be conducted online to avoid leaving us alone for 3 to 4 days, but her colleagues and my dad eventually convinced her that everything would be fine and that I was old enough to take care of myself and my brothers. Besides, an older lady named Emily lived on our street and adored us. She would help with anything we needed. We spent 2 days going over everything that needed to be locked inside the house, the windows, the doors, and above all, never opening the door to anyone but Emily. So, Off they went to Portland, my mom with a heavy heart, but also excited about the opportunity and the trip ahead. I can still feel her farewell kiss on my cheek and hear her words, "I trust you." The first night was perfect. My first night of freedom. It's not like my parents were super strict or denied me freedom, but they always had their boundaries, like any other parent. Now it was my turn to do what I wanted. We stayed up late playing video games and eating the homemade pizza my mom had made. We also found 2 unopened packs of chocolate chip cookies. My mom always hid them around the house so they wouldn't be eaten the same day they were bought. Little did she know we always knew her favorite hiding spots. It must have been around 4 a.m. when we finally fell asleep in the living room. So the next day, we didn't wake up until 1 p.m. I felt a bit guilty for keeping my brothers up so late. My mom had trusted me, but it would only be that one night. I remember saying this out loud to myself. Around 4 p.m., Richard, one of my brothers, came to ask if any of us had slept in my bed. We both said no, and I asked why. That was a strange question coming from my brother. He said that, while going to his room, he noticed that my bedroom door was open, and my bed was all messed up. I just went upstairs to see for myself. It was indeed all messed up. The top sheet was completely pulled back, and the bottom sheet was full of creases, as if someone had slept in it and tossed and turned all night. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was sure I had made the bed. It was one of the main rules in the house. Everyone made their bed after waking up, and I had been raised with that habit for as long as I could remember. Besides having made the bed, I was absolutely sure I hadn't laid down in it the night before. Could it have been one of my brothers? It had to be. No one had entered the house to mess up the bed. That was a ridiculous idea. Besides, the night before, I was the one who won pretty much every video game we played, and if there was one thing none of us were good at, it was losing gracefully. The only rational explanation was that, to get back at me for winning, they decided to play a prank. They denied it, but it still had to be them. The rest of the day was spent watching movies and playing games. Our parents called at the end of the day to check if everything was going well, and I proudly told them it was, without thinking twice. After all, in my mind, the messed up bed was just a bad joke by my brothers. I was preparing cereal with milk for dinner. I know it's not the healthiest meal, but I'm sure we've all done this before. That's when I heard a noise from upstairs. It sounded like something made of glass had fallen and shattered. I peeked through the door and saw both my brothers in the living room, also looking toward the stairs that led upstairs. I still vividly remember the silent look we exchanged. It must have been around 10 p.m. It was already dark outside, and I was just a kid, terrified someone was in the house with us. Even so, I didn't want to show weakness in front of my brothers. After all, I was the older one. So despite all my instincts to run, I grabbed a frying pan and went to investigate the noise. I turned on all the lights and avoided making any noise. The upstairs of the house comprised a long hallway, 3 bedrooms, and a bathroom. My room was at the end of the hallway, and with the door open, I could see my bed from the top of the stairs. Once again, it was in disarray, this time even worse, with sheets strewn everywhere. That's when I glanced at the floor and noticed the vase my dad had given my mom shattered. Someone was inside the house with us. To this day, I don't know how I summoned the courage to snap out of that terrifying trance. I dashed down the stairs, shouting for my brothers to run, which they did without hesitation. Together, we sprinted screaming to Mrs. Emily's house. By the time we reached her door, she was already opening it, looking bewildered and asking what had happened for us to be screaming like that. She let us in immediately, but before stepping inside, I glanced back at our house and saw him in my bedroom window. A looming figure wearing a clown mask. I believe those who haven't experienced sheer terror can't comprehend the panic, a force that engulfs you entirely and takes over. It's as if your mind operates devoid of any rational thought, driven purely by instinct. My brothers were absolutely terrified, and by then, Mrs. Emily had also looked in the same direction as me and saw exactly what I did. She immediately dashed to her phone and called 911. It took precisely 42 minutes for the police to arrive, and by then, the man with the clown mask had vanished. We never discovered who he was or what he wanted. We simply moved to Portland and tried to bury the events of that night as deeply as possible in our minds. I think I managed relatively well. Unlike my brothers, I never sought therapy, but even 15 years later, I still dread being home alone. And to this day, I can't bear the sight of a clown mask. Have you ever had a moment where you saved someone, or were saved purely by listening to your intuition? 2 months ago, I saved my cousin from a terrible fate just because I chose to trust my gut. My family has always been pretty close, especially since my parents had me when they were still really young. They were practically kids themselves, so the whole family pitched in to help raise me. Because of this, I'm the oldest of 5 cousins, with at least a 20-year age gap between us. On May 6th, my aunt and uncle called to see if I could watch my 3-year-old cousin for a few days. They'd been planning a trip forever, but never got the chance to go. Finally, everything lined up for them. It was just 5 days. But since my cousin is only 3, it would have been tough for him. As the oldest of 5 cousins, I'm the go-to babysitter. I've always loved kids and have a natural knack for handling them. Watching him for those 5 days seemed pretty straightforward. I'd taken a year off from college to figure out if it was really what I wanted, so I didn't have anything better to do. I was picking up odd jobs here and there, but nothing too permanent. On the first day, we went to the park and then did some shopping. The weather was nice, and the park wasn't too crowded. On the way home, I noticed the gas tank was low, so I decided to make a quick stop at the gas station to fill it up, just before reaching home. I was paying for the gas when I noticed a man peering through my car window. Normally, I wouldn't have thought it was strange. Maybe he was just making sure the kid inside wasn't left alone and that I'd be back soon. But his insistence and the way he signaled to another car in the lot made me wary. I paid as quickly as I could and approached the man, asking if he needed help. He quickly justified himself, saying that he liked the car model and was just admiring the interior. I found that odd, since the car was old and nothing special. But before I could respond, he was already heading back to another car. Inside, in the passenger seat, was a small woman who quickly looked away when I glanced at her. I vividly remember thinking that the world is full of awkward people who have terrible social skills. I got in the car and drove straight home. It was a short trip, less than 5 minutes, so it wasn't long before we were back inside, watching cartoons and playing with Legos. The first night was surprisingly easy. My cousin was tired from all the playing at the park, so I put him to bed right after dinner and had the rest of the night to myself. The next day, we followed the same routine. We went to the park to play. He loved it and got tired enough to sleep well through the night without any trouble. I enjoyed the fresh air and was happy to see he hadn't yet fallen into the tech obsession. He just wanted to play like a kid his age should. We had been at the park for over half an hour when I noticed a woman watching us. She looked well kept, but something about her expression made the hairs on my arms stand up. She was staring at us intently, without looking away. Was she lost in thought? I'd done that before. Stared at someone absent-mindedly, only to snap out of it, embarrassed. Then she got up and walked over to us. Up close, her face seemed familiar, but I couldn't figure out where I knew her from. I was pretty sure I didn't know her, but I'd definitely seen her face before. As she got closer, she said she was happy to see such a healthy, energetic boy playing. There was a hint of sadness in her voice. With the strange woman there and the weather getting colder, I politely excused us and left, saying we'd come back another day when it was nicer out. The rest of the day went by without any issues, and by 9 p.m., my cousin was asleep again. I went back to the living room and decided to put on a movie. The Visit was on TV, a film about 2 siblings who become increasingly frightened by their grandparents' disturbing behavior while visiting them on vacation. The movie came out in 2015, and I'd seen it before, but with nothing better on, I settled in. I must have dozed off because I woke up startled at 3:42 a.m., according to the clock in the living room, when I heard a loud noise. Was it glass breaking? I must have been in a deep sleep because I couldn't tell where the sound came from. I ran to the bedroom, fearing my cousin had accidentally knocked something over in his room. When I got there, he was awake and crying, clearly disturbed by the same noise. But nothing was out of place, so the noise didn't come from here. I calmed him down and put him back to sleep, staying alert for any other sounds. I didn't hear anything else, but I decided to check the house just in case. Looking back, I'm relieved I made that choice. I had gone over almost the entire house and found nothing alarming. But in the last room I checked, the kitchen, one of the windows was completely shattered. Someone had thrown a large rock through it. That must have been the noise. I rushed to the drawer to grab a knife when I heard another noise, this time coming from outside. Someone was walking around. At this point, my mind was racing with possibilities. Had they broken the window to steal something and left before I came downstairs? I had spent enough time with my cousin for someone to get in, grab something easy, and leave. Without thinking twice, I opened the front door and went outside, heading towards the noise. It was coming from the back of the house and was loud and persistent, too loud to be a thief trying to sneak around. As I rounded the corner of the house, I saw her at the back. A woman trying to force her way into the shed. What on earth was she doing? She couldn't possibly think there was anything valuable in there, especially making that much noise in the dead of night. I called out to her, and when she looked directly at me, everything clicked. My brain worked at lightning speed, connecting all the dots from the past 2 days. This woman was the same one from the park, the same one who had been in the car at the gas station. She wasn't here to steal anything. She was a distraction while the man was inside the house. I ran faster than I ever had before and found him loading my cousin inside of a van parked at the front of the house. Without a second thought, I shoved him against the van with all my strength. I knocked him to the ground and fought with everything I had, leaving him unconscious on the ground. I grabbed my cousin, who was also unconscious, and ran back inside the house. I needed to call 911 before the man woke up or the woman tried anything. I grabbed my phone and locked us both in the bathroom. I was shaking uncontrollably from fear and adrenaline. The police arrived in less than 5 minutes, but personally it felt like an hour, the longest wait of my life. They immediately arrested the man. The woman had time to flee, but she didn't get far. They found her the next day, trying to buy a train ticket. To this day, I still think about how, if I hadn't reacted so quickly, my cousin might have been abducted. It's only been 2 months, but they're both behind bars awaiting trial. From what we've gathered, there's enough evidence to connect them to a trafficking network that spans across the United States. The world is indeed a scary place, so I decided to share this story in hopes that you never let your guard down with your children. The world is full of people with bad intentions, and if we don't keep a cool head and stay vigilant, something unimaginable might happen to us next.